Hey friends, so unfortunately our last essay 162, got cut off because my power ran out. So here we are. Let's just go ahead and pick up for the second part here of essay 162. Now we've been reading American Miscellany, of course, published in 1865, of course, and our previous installment was the first part of this essay called Our Pilgrim Fathers. So let's just continue on to part two. We're here on page 422 of this venerable book, and hopefully we can learn a little bit something about our Pilgrim Fathers, part two. All right. The charge of religious intolerance is often made. The Pilgrims did not come to New England for the purpose of establishing universal toleration. They came to preserve their own faith. And what if they were misguided and overzealous? We are not to judge them by the light of this age and this country. Besides, this theory of unlimited tolerance, which, even at the present time, finds little favor, except in this free and charitable land, did not originate in minds filled with religious ardor. The most tolerant man was not apt to be the most devout. Interesting. We condemn their conduct in the case of the Baptists and the Quakers, and desire to make out no strong defense for the Pilgrims, or to palliate persecution in any form. And while all intelligent persons admit that the glory of having first set an example of a practical and extensive system of religious freedom was reserved for the Puritans of England who landed on these shores, yet the first legislator who fully recognized the rights of conscience was Roger Williams. And here we have a little asterisk after Roger Williams' name and a very long footnote which is attached to that asterisk. So let's go ahead and read this footnote on Roger Williams. Okay, so he was a native of Wales and emigrated to New England in 1630. He was then a young man of austere life and popular manners, full of reading, skilled in controversy, and gifted with a rapid, copious, and vehement eloquence. Feisty. The writers of those days represent him as being full of turbulent and singular opinions. Maybe a little annoying. Okay. And the whole country, saith the quaint Cotton Mather, was soon like to be set on fire by the rapid motion of a windmill in the head of this one man. The heresy which appeared most grievous to his brethren was his zeal for unqualified religious liberty. In the warmth of his charity he contended for freedom of conscience, even to the Papists and Arminians, with a security of civil peace to all. A doctrine that filled the Massachusetts clergy with horror and alarm. With a spirit of resolute independence, he departed, no one knew whither, accompanied by a few of his people, who, to use their own language, had gone with their beloved pastor to seek their providences. After some wanderings, he pitched his tent at a place to which he gave the name of Providence, and there became the founder and legislator of the colony of Rhode Island. There he continued to rule sometimes as governor and always as the guide and father of the settlement, for 48 years, employing himself in acts of kindness to his former enemies, affording relief to the distressed and offering an asylum to the persecuted. The government of his colony was formed on his favorite principle that in matters of faith and worship every citizen should walk according to the light of his own conscience, without restraint or interference from the civil magistrate. During a visit which Williams made to England in 1643 for the purpose of procuring a colonial charter, he published a formal and labored vindication of his doctrine under the title of The Bloody Tenet, or A Dialogue Between Truth and Peace. In this work, written with his usual boldness and decision, he anticipated most of the arguments which, 50 years after, attracted so much attention when they were brought forward by Locke. His own conduct in power was in perfect accordance with his speculative opinions. And when, in his old age, the order of his little community was disturbed by an eruption of Quaker preachers, he combated them only in pamphlets and public disputations, and contented himself with overwhelming their doctrine with a torrent of learning, sarcasms, syllogisms, and puns. It should also be remembered, to the honor of Roger Williams, that no one of the early colonists, without excepting William Penn himself, equaled him in justice and benevolence toward the Indians. He labored incessantly and with success to enlighten and conciliate them, and by this means acquired a personal influence among them, which he frequently had the enviable satisfaction of extorting in behalf of those who had banished him. Excellent. It is not the least remarkable or characteristic incident of his varied life that, within 1 year after his exile, and while he was yet hot with controversy and indignant at his wrongs, his first interference with the affairs of his former colony was to protect its frontier settlements from an Indian massacre. From that time forward, though he was never permitted to return to Massachusetts, he was frequently employed by the government of that province in negotiation with the Indians and on other business of the highest importance. Even Cotton Mather, in spite of his steadfast abhorrence of Williams's heresy, seems to have been touched with the magnanimity and kindness of the man, and after having stigmatized him as that infamous Cora of New England, he confesses a little reluctantly that, for the 40 years after his exile, he acquitted himself so laudably that many judicious people judged him to have had the root of the matter in him during the long winter of his retirement. This was the address of J. Prescott Hall, Esquire, 1847, to which we are indebted for the substance of this article. Excellent. Let's get back here to our essay. We are talking about Roger Williams, a name less illustrious than it deserves to be, for although his eccentricities of conduct and opinion may sometimes provoke a smile, he was a man of genius and virtue and admirable firmness, courage, and disinterestedness, and of unbounded benevolence. The most that can be said in justification is that the Pilgrims came especially to enjoy their own opinions, and to establish a commonwealth of their own, and therefore it was considered by them no injustice to pass laws to banish schism. Besides, says the apologist, Williams's banishment was of his own seeking, and the time was chosen by himself, and further, though his view of the manner of toleration must now be admitted to be right in the abstract, we cannot justly find fault with the fathers of New England for not adopting it then. As to the Baptists, only one individual was punished, and that one not for heresy, but for being a scandalous person, much given to idleness and lying. The Quakers who were punished were no more like the gentle and orderly friends of the present day than the latter are like the Mormons. With regard to all these things, we should not use the eyes which have seen the improvements of 2 centuries, but judge from the sentiment of that time. It was easy to condemn the laws of Massachusetts against witchcraft, but had England no such laws? Why, 70 years after Blackstone spoke of witchcraft as a thing recognized everywhere, both by history and by law, and under Sir Matthew Hale, who lived to 1776, more persons were put to death in a single county of England than ever suffered in all New England together. In New England there were no executions after 1693, but in England death was inflicted for witchcraft as late as 1722. We might here dwell at great length on the freedom of the New England fathers from personal ambition, and truthfully set forth their conduct during the revolutions of Cromwell and 1688, as well as the part they took in our own revolution, but the limits assigned to this article will not allow us to enlarge on these instructive and profitable themes. Their deeds of patriotism and bravery will be preserved and transmitted to the latest generations. The descendants of the Pilgrims have spread themselves over every section of this widespread continent. The prophecy made by Mr. Webster in a speech delivered at Plymouth 27 years ago, that the sons of New England would stop only with the shores of the Pacific, has already become a portion of the history of the world. The following beautiful lines from the gifted pen of Mrs. Sigourney may be so appropriately introduced here that we believe our readers will, notwithstanding the length of this article, be pleased to see them in this connection. Well, I am pleased to see a female poet here, a poetess. Off we go, Mrs. Sigourney, of no first name. It's entitled The Pilgrim Fathers. How slow yon lonely vessel plows the main. Amid the heavy billows now she seems a toiling atom, then from wave to wave leaps madly, by the tempest lashed, or reels half-wrecked through gulfs profound. Moons wax and wane, but still that patient traveler treads the deep. I see an ice-bound coast toward which she steers with such a tardy movement that it seems a stern winter's hand hath turned her keel to stone and sealed his victory on her slippery shrouds. They land, not like the Genoese with glittering sword and gaudy train and eye kindling with golden fancies. Forth they come from their long prison, hardly forms that brave the world's unkindness. Men of hoary hair, maidens of fearless heart, and matrons grave, who hush the wailing infant with a glance. Bleak nature's desolation wraps them round, eternal forests and unyielding earth, and savage men who through the thickets peer with vengeful arrow. What could lure their steps to this drear desert? Ask of him who left his father's home to roam through Haran's wilds, distrusting not the guide who called him forth, nor doubting, though a stranger, that his seed should be as ocean's sands. But yon lone bark hath spread her parting sail. They crowd the strand, those lone few pilgrims. Can ye scan the woe that wrings their bosoms, as the last frail link binding to man and habitable earth is severed? Can ye tell what pangs were there with keen regrets, what sickness of the heart, what yearnings o'er their forfeit land of birth, their distant dear ones? Long with straining eye they watch the lessening speck. Heard ye no shriek of anguish when that bitter loneliness sank down into their bosoms? No, they turn back to their dreary famished huts and pray. Pray, and the ills that haunt this transient life fade into air. Up in each girded breast there springs a rooted and mysterious strength, a loftiness to face a world in arms, to strip the pomp from scepters and to lay on duty's sacred altar the warm blood of slain affections, should they rise between the soul and God. O ye who proudly boast in your free veins the blood of sires like these, look to their lineaments. Dread lest ye lose their likeness in your sons. Should Mammon cling too close around your heart, or wealth beget that bloated luxury which eats the core from manly virtue, or the tempting world make faint the Christian purpose in your soul, turn ye to Plymouth Rock, and where they knelt kneel, and renew the vow they breathed to God.